Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 4 running back rankings for fantasy football in 2021. Inside of today's video, we're going to be going over my top 32 ranked running backs of the week, as well as going in depth into why I have each running back ranked in their individual slot inside of the top 32. But before we get on into things, I'd like to ask, if you are new to my channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below, because not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 fantasy football championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I'd also like to ask that if you guys are on Twitter and would like to follow me, to please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. The link to my Twitter is also down below in the description of the video. So without further ado, let's get into my top 32 ranked running backs of week number 4. We begin at number 1 with Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans at the New York Jets. In this matchup, this is obviously just a wet dream scenario for Derrick Henry. Now, it's not necessarily because the Jets defense is awful up against the run, because they're nowhere near as bad against the run as they are up against the pass, but it's a wet dream scenario because AJ Brown is likely out in this game, and Julio Jones is either going to play or sit out. And if Julio Jones plays in this game, based upon what we've seen throughout Julio Jones' career, he probably won't play too well, because typically coming off of an injury or when he's banged up throughout the week, he does normally play, but he doesn't play up to the caliber that you're used to with Julio Jones. And this is a game that could get out of hand early. The Tennessee Titans could absolutely ravage, could absolutely rout the Jets, and that will lead to a very heavy rushing attack by the Tennessee Titans offense. We saw a very similar thing last week with the Denver Broncos running a train on the Jets, and I expect the same thing to happen here with the Tennessee Titans and Derrick Henry, as he is ranked as my number 1 running back on the week. At number 2, we have Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints going up against the New York Football Jets. Double New York defenses that these running backs are going up against in the number 1 and number 2 overall spot. Alvin Kamara has been getting fed the rock through the rushing game, which is one of the most unexpected aspects of the fantasy football season. Normally, Alvin Kamara gets so much of his fantasy value from the dump-offs, from the receptions that come his way each and every single game. And those are still coming his way. But I believe that Sean Payton is trying to run the ball more with Alvin Kamara because he doesn't want Jameis Winston to fuck up the game, because he understands that Jameis Winston is going to make these stupid plays that ends up leading to a turnover, leading to an interception. So what he does is he says, you know what? You can't throw an interception, or you can't mess up this play if you just hand it to Alvin Kamara. So they've been handing the ball off a lot more to Alvin Kamara. The New York Football Giants defense isn't all that great. I expect the Saints to play very big in this game, and Alvin Kamara is obviously always a focal point in this Saints offense. So Alvin Kamara is my number 2 running back on the week. At number 3, we have Austin Ekeler of the LA Chargers going up against the Las Vegas Raiders at home in LA for the Chargers. Austin Ekeler has been relatively solid thus far this season. He is clearly a key focal point inside of this Chargers offense. I expect this game to be a back and forth affair that will heavily involve Austin Ekeler's receiving ability up against the Raiders. The Raiders defense has been pretty solid thus far this season, but I do not believe that they're one of the best defenses in the NFL. I think this should be a very exciting game to watch on Monday Night Football, and I think Austin Ekeler takes charge in this matchup up against the Raiders. At number 4, we have Dalvin Cook, running back of the Minnesota Vikings, going up against the Cleveland Browns. Dalvin Cook is not 100% to go in this game, as it's not 100% known if he is going to suit up or not, but my best guess is that he will end up playing this week. I think they sat him out last week out of precaution. Alexander Mattison looked good, but obviously if Dalvin Cook does not end up suiting up against the Cleveland Browns, then Alexander Mattison moves into must-start category for the week. This week up against the Cleveland Browns is not the most ideal matchup for a running back like Dalvin Cook, but when you are a running back of the upper echelon like Dalvin Cook, it doesn't really matter what the defensive matchup is. This is a guy that could easily finish as the number 1 overall running back on the week. Despite the defense he is playing, he is very involved in this Minnesota Vikings offense, and I expect this one to be a very high-scoring game, and Dalvin Cook should be able to be seeing the rock a ton in this matchup. At number 5, we have Mr. Double A Ron Jones, running back of the Green Bay Packers, going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, this is a matchup that is very tough. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense is very good, but then again, Aaron Jones is on the Packers offense. the Packers offense is very good. So even going up against a tough matchup up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't think this is too tall of a mountain to climb for Aaron Jones to have very solid success in this matchup. Aaron Jones is going to be very involved in this game. A lot of people forget to talk about the fact that Aaron Jones is very involved in the receiving part of the game for the Green Bay Packers, and I think Aaron Jones could have a huge week, especially if this is a blowout where they can just run the ball late on into the game. Now, I know that may be counterintuitive to what I was talking about how the Steelers have a great defense, but the fact is that the offense in Pittsburgh is bad. Big Ben doesn't look very good, so Aaron Jones may be up big in this game and be able to run the rock out late on into the game. At number 6, we have 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, full Chubb, half Chubb himself of the Cleveland Browns, going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. Nick Chubb had a down game last week as Kareem Hunt absolutely went to Pound Town. I think Nick Chubb will be back in the driver's seat this game up against the Minnesota Vikings. This is going to be a very interesting matchup. The Cleveland Browns obviously are such a run-heavy team. That is kind of the MO of the Kevin Stefanski offense, so every single week, Nick Chubb is going to be a very reliable running back here up against the Minnesota Vikings defense. Is certainly a plus matchup for Mr. 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. At number 7, we have Najee Harris, running back of the Pittsburgh Steelers, going up against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field. Now, we just talked about this game a little bit when I was talking about Aaron Jones, but the thing is for Najee Harris is even if the Steelers offense can't get it up, even if the Steelers offense needs Viagra to get things going, Najee Harris saw 19 fucking targets last week. 19 targets. Christian McCaffrey saw that and had a wet dream at night because Najee Harris is going to be ultra involved in the receiving game here. I'm not too sure if Deontay Johnson or Juju Smith-Schuster are going to suit up. It seems like Deontay Johnson is trending towards playing, but Juju Smith-Schuster is trending the opposite direction into being out, and that will even further emphasize the kind of usage that could go Najee Harris's way in the receiving game. Now, do I expect him to see 19 targets in this game? No, but I wouldn't be surprised if he saw 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe even 12 targets in this game going up against the Green Bay Packers defense. Even though I'm worried about the Steelers offense, Najee Harris is still going to be heavily used here, and I think despite the fact that the offense looks like absolute shit, Najee Harris could still have very big success, great success, as Mr. Borat would say, week in and week out. At number 8, we have DeAndre Swift of the Detroit Lions going up against the Chi-Town Bears in Chicago. The Chicago Bears team as a whole just looks like a dumpster fire. Matt Nagy's an idiot. They don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback. My guess is Justin Fields, but they're talking about Andy Dalton. They're talking about Big Dick Nick Foles being the starting quarterback. So I have no idea what's going on in Chicago. The defense that everyone always talks about being very good is on a downward spiral compared to what they used to be over the last couple of years. So this is just a team that is just a shell of themselves. But then again, we're talking about them going up against the Detroit Lions, who are just a bad team overall. But I guess the thing that I talked about all offseason where, hey, the Detroit Lions aren't going to be able to run the ball a lot because they're going to be down big in these games. They're going to have to throw the ball. Just does not matter at all because of how much Jared Goff just throws the ball to DeAndre Swift. I am very sure that there are so many designed plays in this offense to just get the ball into DeAndre Swift's hands because he is probably the best playmaker, if not the second best playmaker in this offense behind TJ Hockenson. So with that said, this matchup up against the Bears, obviously the Bears defense, while it is on a downward spiral, it isn't just a complete and utter dumpster fire on defense, but I still do believe that DeAndre Swift will be able to have a big game, and there's no reason to rank DeAndre Swift outside of the top 10 up to this point in the season with how much usage he sees week in and week out. The only worrisome thing is if Jamal Williams does end up vulturing him potentially once or twice inside of that game, and that would obviously shoot down the upside of Swift. At number 9, we have Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Carolina Panthers defense is one of the most underrated defenses in the National Football League. To me, they look very, very good every single time that I watch them. The Carolina Panthers are 3-0 up to this point in the season, and Mono Man Sam continues to want to push that and get to 4-0. This game up against the Dallas Cowboys will prove to be a tough task. Ezekiel Elliott looked very, very good up against the Philadelphia Eagles last week in that night game. Will he be that involved in this game is the question. Because the Dallas Cowboys were up by a zillion on the Eagles. The Eagles seemed to have no fight in that game. They seemed to have no way to counteract what the fuck was happening by the Dallas Cowboys rushing attack. So what happens if they have to pass a little bit more up against the Panthers? Then Ezekiel Elliott will not be as good, obviously. But at the end of the day, Ezekiel Elliott is still one of the best running backs in the NFL. Despite the matchup, I still think Zeke will be able to have a mighty fine game as my running back number 9. At number 10, we have Antonio Gibson, running back of the Washington Football Team, going up against the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. And right now is the perfect time to mention the fact that the running backs that played on Thursday night, James Robinson, Joe Mixon, they are not going to be included in this video because they already played, and I don't want to rehash on some running backs that have already gotten the go on Thursday. I'd rather talk about the other running backs that are playing on Sunday as well as on Monday, so you guys can adjust your rankings to the Sunday and Monday games. I had James Robinson as well as Joe Mixon ranked relatively highly in my rankings. Hopefully Joe Mixon is okay because he did leave that game late with an apparent injury. If you guys have ended up enjoying this video thus far, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. I would greatly appreciate it. So at number 10, like I said, we have Antonio Gibson of the Washington Football Team going up against the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. Based upon all metrics, the Atlanta Falcons defense sucks complete and utter donkey hog. But at the end of the day, the question here is, what will the usage be for Antonio Gibson? Will it be what we saw up against the Buffalo Bills last week, where he's a key aspect, a key piece in this offense? Or will it be what we saw up against the Giants, where he's getting vultured by J.D. McKissic, and J.D. McKissic had carved out a decent role inside of this offense? I am just not too sure. I am still not 100% certain, but up against the Atlanta Falcons, even if J.D. McKissic is taking away some sort of a role in Antonio Gibson's game, they're going up against the Falcons. This should be a smash matchup for Antonio Gibson, and I expect him to have a very big game this week up against that Falcons defense. Next up, we move to running backs 11 through 20. At number 11, we have Chris Carson of the Seattle Seahawks going up against the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. Now, I had a tough time ranking running backs 11 through 13, as I could see all of these guys being a top 10 running back on the week, and we will get into why I had a bit of that confusion when we talk about Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley at running backs 12 and 13. So Chris Carson is a very reliable piece inside the Seattle Seahawks offense week in and week out, despite them letting Russell Wilson have that cook, letting him actually let the football fly Dan Marino style. That's great and all, but Chris Carson is still very involved on the team. There's a good chance that this is a very close matchup in which the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll are looking to run the ball a lot, and Chris Carson is a guy that is also involved in the receiving game, which is something that not a lot of people like to talk about. With Chris Carson, it's a very similar scenario, at least in my eyes, to Aaron Jones, because not too many people bring that up for him. Same thing goes with Chris Carson here up against the San Francisco 49ers. I like Chris Carson a lot. At number 12, we have Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts going up against the Miami Dolphins in Miami. Now, as a Miami Dolphins fan, I know that our defense as a whole is pretty good, but up against the run, it is just a hole. It is a black hole of death for the Dolphins defense because they cannot stop the run to save their fucking life. The Miami Dolphins might get a train ran on them by Jonathan Taylor, and that would not surprise me at all. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jonathan Taylor was like a top 5, maybe even the number 1 running back on the week. But what is detracting me from going all out and ranking Jonathan Taylor ultra high on the week is the fact that the Indianapolis Colts offense looks deflated like the football that the Patriots used against them in the playoffs just a couple of years ago. It looks bad. Carson Wentz is clearly hobbled. The offensive line doesn't look very good. Jonathan Taylor has struggled thus far this season, but if it was ever time to break out of that curse, that chakra magic that is being put on Jonathan Taylor, it would be this week, as I assume he has a big game up against the Dolphins. But there are definitely some risks with Taylor as to why I didn't rank him so high, because the offense just looks bad. At number 13, we have Saquon Barkley of the New York Football Giants going up against the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. Now, when it comes to Saquon Barkley, in week 1 and week number 2, I told you guys to sit him. And in week number 3, I said the exact same thing. And guess what? Last week up against the Atlanta Falcons, that was completely wrong because Joe Judge ended up unleashing Saquon Barkley. He finally let Saquon Barkley get that workload that we wanted when we drafted Saquon Barkley. So from here on out, regardless of the defense, you are going to play Saquon Barkley because he is one of the best running backs in the NFL, and he can do a lot with very little given to him. But the question for this matchup is Is Saquon Barkley going up against the Saints defense that locked down the Packers and that played very well up against the Patriots last week? Or are they going up against the Saints defense that played not so hot in week number 2 up against the Carolina Panthers? That is the question. Maybe if it's an every other week type of thing, because they played great week 1, shitty week 2, great week 3. Maybe in week number 4 they have a bad game. I'm starting Saquon Barkley regardless. But the Saints defense to me is still up in the air on how good they are or not. At number 4, we have Chuba Hubbard, running back of the Carolina Panthers, going up against the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry's World. Now, the Dallas defense looks good. It looks amazing. Last year, that defense sucked complete and utter ass. They were forcing Dak Prescott to throw the ball so much that the guy ended up getting hurt. Now, did he get hurt because he was throwing the ball that much? Probably not, right? But he did end up getting hurt that season, and he was throwing the ball at a uber high rate. But this year, the defense did a full 180, and they look like a great defense, especially up against the Philadelphia Eagles. But does that mean that maybe the Dallas defense is elite, or that the Eagles offense just isn't very good? That's kind of the question and the mental battle you're going to have in your brain when deciding where to rank Chuba Hubbard on the week. Going up against the Dallas Cowboys, the Carolina Panthers offense has been very good thus far this season. Now, they haven't had some ultra tough task ahead of them. This week, they will up against the Dallas Cowboys. Well, I guess technically they have, right? Because they played very good up against the Saints. This week, up against the Cowboys, I expect Chuba Hubbard to be very involved in this offense. But another question that comes to my head is this going to be like Mike Davis last year, where Christian McCaffrey goes down and Hubbard is just in the lineup for a majority of the snaps? He's getting that big workload as if Christian McCaffrey was in the game. Or is it going to be one of those other scenarios where a starting running back goes down and maybe they don't have a Tony Pollard, maybe they don't have an Alexander Madison? They have to kind of divvy up the workload, because to me, Rolls-Royce Freeman looked pretty solid last week up against the Houston Texans after McCaffrey went down. So that is also another kind of situation that's a bit confusing in this game. I still think Hubbard will be seeing a majority of the touches up against Dallas, so I'll rank him inside the top 15 at the running back position. At number 15, we have David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears going up against the Detroit Lions. Now, this is the point at the running back position where things start to get very scary, because David Montgomery's offensive line is basically a fucking turnstile. They basically just open wide, they open up and let any defender just run through there and plow Justin Fields. Justin Fields got absolutely mollywopped last week. They're going up against the Lions defense, so maybe they could hold up a little bit better up against the Lions, but it is kind of worrisome for David Montgomery. And not kind of worrisome, very worrisome. But at the end of the day, David Montgomery is very good, and I expect this game to be close between them and the Lions. I think David Montgomery will have a much better week than he had last week. At number 16, we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back of the Chiefs, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia. Now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I have absolutely zero read on if this motherfucker is actually good or not, because throughout the season he hasn't looked very good, but last week, despite fumbling in the game, Andy Reid continues to still go to the guy. Bruce Arians wishes he could do something like that, because Clyde, despite fumbling and not looking too hot early on in the game, they feed him and he plays well. Up against the Eagles, if he continues to see that amount of usage here in Kansas City, it's really any running back could do good, right? Because the Chiefs' offense is so good. He just needs to get the correct volume. And if he's able to get that volume, then he should easily be able to have a big week up against the Eagles defense. At number 17, we have Kareem Hunt of the Cleveland Browns going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. So when it comes to Kareem Hunt, last week he had a really big game, but normally Kareem Hunt is kind of just that safety net that you cast over your team. I make this joke in every single video, but it really is true. Kareem Hunt is like the condom you wrap around your team. It keeps your team safe. Kareem Hunt is never really going to have that really big game, right, where he has 25 plus points and he completely wins you your week by himself. But he's also never going to have that game where he shits the bed in your lineup, shout out to Odell Beckham Jr., his teammate, and then you just feel disappointed. That never really happens with Hunt. So with that said, up against the Vikings, I expect him to have a cool-down matchup compared to last week, but I also expect him to be a very solid and reliable running back in a good matchup up against the Vikings defense. At number 18 and 19, we have the Miles duo of Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Chiefs. At 19, we have Myles Gaskin, running back of the Miami Dolphins, going up against the Indianapolis Colts. And I had a tough time ranking these two as I kind of flip-flopped between the two. Miles Sanders is a great running back. in my opinion. He's like a very talented running back, but the situation there just doesn't seem to be the most ideal. Last week, I'm pretty sure Miles Sanders had 2 carries in that game up against the Dallas Cowboys. It seems like they were like, you know what? We can't run on you, so we're just going to throw the ball. But in reality, we couldn't throw the fucking ball on you either because the Dallas Cowboys defense was playing out of their minds last week. So Miles Sanders gets the Chiefs. The Chiefs defense isn't some world beater. The question is, will Miles Sanders be given the volume to have success, or will this be a game where he is underfed again and isn't able to produce for your fantasy football lineup? That's a big question. I think he will get a lot more work this week, so I got him at running back 18. At number 19, like we said, we got Myles Gaskin, that bitch Carol Gaskin of the Miami Dolphins, going up against the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts offense with Carson Wentz, they suck complete and utter peen, all right? And the defense, they also suck ass, right? The defense is fucking awful. They are so bad. This team is a dumpster fire. This team is embarrassing. They're going to have Hard Knocks come to them in the middle of the season. Who is going to watch that? Who in the right mind is going to turn on HBO, buy an HBO subscription to watch this shit? No one is going to. The Colts stink. Myles Gaskin could have a huge game this week. It is a Jacoby Brissett revenge game. Myles Gaskin is far from an uber safe running back because they have the other running backs there in Salvon Ahmed as well as Malcolm Brown. Now, Myles Gaskin is still the lead back, but there is worries of a potential vulture coming from Malcolm Brown, which happened last week up against the Raiders. So Gaskin's running back 19. At number 20, we have Chase Edmonds of the Arizona Cardinals going up against the LA Rams. Now, last week, the biggest issue with Chase Edmonds is that Cliff Kingsbury refuses to use this man when they're on the goal line or in the red zone, or not even necessarily in the red zone. So maybe like 5 yards out to the 1 yard line, they're going to bring James Conner in the game because Chase Edmonds, he's a short motherfucker. He's not some big Derrick Henry-esque back, right? That's just not him, and that's okay because he's still used in the offense, but when they get there, when they get close to the end zone, when they're about to knock on the door and enter their way into the end zone, Chase Edmonds is nowhere to be found. Okay, so will that change? Maybe, but that's the kind of the worrisome thing about Chase Edmonds because he's not really able to score that many touchdowns. But if he does get that long run or that long dump-off thrown his way, then he could play very good. I expect this to be a very high-scoring attack between the Arizona Cardinals and the LA Rams. These are 2 very good defenses on paper, but based upon what we've seen from the Rams and the Arizona Cardinals is that they're going to be able to get into these firefights in these games, so I expect Chase Edmonds to be very involved because he is the better receiving back out of the 2 of James Conner and Chase Edmonds. Now onto running backs 21 through 24. I had a tough time ranking Moss and Cordero Patterson because I like Cordero Patterson a lot this week. Cordero Patterson is ranked inside of the top 10 at the running back position, I believe, in PPR and half PPR. Cordero Patterson is basically exactly what I expected Mike Davis to be. But somehow in 2021, Cordero Patterson is still involved, and despite me not loving Cordero Patterson, you just have to roll him out there because of how well he's been playing. He's my running back 22 up against the Washington football team. Now, if you can play him as a receiver, you can also play him, but I definitely prefer to throw him into my running back slot. At 21, we have Zach Moss of the Buffalo Bills going up against the Houston Texans. Now, when it comes to Zach Moss and Devin Singletary, this is also just not a crystal clear situation. Zach Moss, based upon last week, is the guy. They're going up against the Houston Texans. The Buffalo Bills may drop 52 points. Just hang 50 on the face of the Houston Texans defense, and if that is the case, which I believe it to be the case, then Zach Moss will be a huge benefactor. But the worry here is that Devin Singletary isn't just gone, he's still there, and is still going to be seeing usage, so that could really hinder the upside of Zach Moss. At 23, we have Trey Sermon of the 49ers going up against Seattle. Sermon, last week, we got the bailout special up against the Packers. It seems like he's having this terrible game, and he finds his way into the end zone, and I was so pumped, because I was banging the drum aggressively for Trey Sermon, and he wasn't playing that hot. But at the end of the game, he was perfectly fine. This week, he gets Seattle. It seems like there's going to be no Elijah Mitchell this week as well. If there is, then I'm fading Trey Sermon, but right now it appears Mitchell is not going to get the go. Elijah Mitchell will not play, and in turn, that makes Trey Sermon a starting running back on the week, who I like up against Seattle. At 24, we have Melvin Gordon, running back of the Denver Broncos, going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Melvin Gordon here has been very, very solid the last couple of weeks. He's been a very reliable running back, but the issue with Melvin Gordon is that Javonte Williams, who's on this list just a couple of running backs down, is still there. He's still looming behind him. This is very much a 50-50 split share. This is very much a close workload between the two running backs. So if Gordon gets the touchdown, then you'll be pumped that you have Melvin Gordon. But if Williams gets the touchdown, then you're going to be a little bit sad that you started Melvin Gordon. But based upon the sample size the last couple of weeks of the season through the first 3 games, Melvin Gordon is the running back to have between the two, at least for right now. So Melvin Gordon's ranked as running back 24 up against a tough Baltimore defense. At 25, we have Darrell Henderson of the LA Rams going up against Arizona. Now, if Darrell Henderson was 100% healthy, he'd probably be inside the top 15, 18-ish running backs, but since he is banged up, I don't feel like he's going to get the 100% workload that he would have seen had he have not gotten injured, because early on in the season, sure, they brought in Sony Michel, but he was nowhere near a key piece of this offense. He was getting some work, of course, because Darrell Henderson can't be out there 100% of the time. No running back can be out there 100% of the time. But Michel just didn't have that much of a workload. But now with Henderson banged up, and I do expect him to play, I do think that Sony Michel will have enough workload in this offense to kind of push Henderson outside the top 24. 26, we have Mike Davis, running back of the Atlanta Falcons, going up against the Washington Football Team. I definitely prefer Cordarrelle Patterson, but I still think Mike Davis does have some sort of value because he still is involved in the offense and will be seeing more touches than Cordarrelle Patterson. It just appears that Cordarrelle Patterson is seeing the more valuable touches for this team. I think Mike Davis is still a solid running back. If Cordarrelle Patterson was to, for some reason, see much less usage, then Mike Davis would be really good. But where this kind of stands right now, Davis falls outside of the top 24. 27, we have Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, like I just said, I'm not really going to completely rehash exactly what I was talking about because you just heard it, right? But there is still a chance that Williams outscores Gordon because he could score the touchdown, or maybe he sees like 5-6 receptions and Gordon doesn't see that, and that just, out ticks off Melvin Gordon and he's able to score more points. This is a very annoying situation because I know if Melvin Gordon wasn't there, Williams would be amazing, and I know if Williams wasn't there, Gordon could be like a top 10 running back. So with how this sits, they kind of just siphon off of each other, but they both have big upside week in and week out. At 28, we have Uncle Lenny of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the New England Patriots. Now, the reason why I have Lenny ranked at 28 is because I feel like for some reason that everyone, including myself, just thinks this is going to be a blowout. Tampa Bay, Tom Brady, slinging the rock 7,000 times. Everyone gets a touchdown, Oprah style. Chris Godwin, you get a touchdown. Mike Evans, you get a touchdown. Antonio Brown, you get a touchdown. Rob Gronkowski, you get a touchdown. You all get a touchdown type of deal, if you know what I'm talking about. That Oprah fucking video where she's pointing everywhere. You get this, you all get this type of deal. That maybe just Uncle Lenny scores like 3 touchdowns in this game, because why the fuck would that not happen, right? But this is a great matchup for Lenny, because if they're up big, they're going to run the ball a lot, and that will benefit Uncle Lenny. But at the same time, there's also the chance that Lenny makes one minute mistake and Bruce Arians just fucking tosses the dude into the doghouse. At 29, we have Damian Harris of the New England Deflatriots going up against the Bucks. This is a damn near impossible matchup. But with the injury to James White, I would think that Damian Harris would get enough dump-offs potentially to kind of subdue what might be a 2-point performance by Damian Harris. At number 30, we have Latavius Murray of the Baltimore Ravens going up against the Denver Broncos defense. This is a very interesting game in Mile High because we will see how legit the Denver Broncos are. Right now, they're 3-0, but they have slapped up 3 bitch-made teams. They've beat the Giants, they've beat the Jets, and they've beat the Jaguars. So how good really are they? They haven't played 3 great teams. But Latavius Murray, is he the guy? Is Tyson Williams the guy? At this point, it's a fucking guess. It's a complete guess because the first 2 weeks, it's Tyson Williams' season. But last week, it seemed like they couldn't see Tyson Williams. It was like John Cena, you can't see me. They're not looking his way. They're looking for Latavius. So I don't have any confidence in either of those backs, but if I had to lean from one way or the other, I'd tell you to start Latavius Murray. Final two running backs. If you guys have ended up enjoying thus far, please make sure you do hit that like button as well as that subscribe button. At 31, we have Nyheim Hines, running back of the Indianapolis Colts, going up against the Miami Dolphins. Now, none of the Raiders running backs made their way into this rankings because I am just so confused as to what is happening right now, because I think if Josh Jacobs plays, then Peyton Barber is going to cut into his workload just enough to kind of eliminate Jacobs from having value, and that will also kind of eliminate Peyton Barber from having value. And I came to this conclusion because that's just how I feel. I feel like Jacobs isn't 100% good enough to go, but if he does go, then he's going to play. It's kind of similar to the Darrell Henderson situation that we talked about a little bit earlier. So Nyheim Hines up against Miami. You just need to hope with Nyheim Hines that he's seeing a bunch of dump-offs and that Jonathan Taylor isn't just eviscerating them through running the ball. Nyheim Hines, I don't love him, but again, he does have that upside to get a bunch of dump-offs in this game, which could elevate him inside of the top 32. And at number 32, we have Jamal with 2 A's, Williams of the Detroit Lions going up against the Chi-Town Bears in Chicago. Now again, Swift is the guy. He won the hot hand approach. This was a hot hand approach backfield. That's what they were saying all offseason. Dan Campbell was saying. And guess what? Jamal Williams is not the hot hand, and Swift is. But Williams will still get the opportunity to touch the ball. He could potentially vulture Swift, which could lead him to be a potential top 24 running back on the week. But to me, he's not a guy you want to heavily rely on, and that is why he is running back 32 in my rankings. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. I would appreciate it a ton. We'll be back tomorrow with 3 videos: wide receiver rankings, quarterback rankings, and tight end rankings. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day, and as always, good boy!